Today we're in northern Wisconsin with family. We are going to go through and make homemade Italian sausage. In just moments we will get started, but take a look at the beautiful scenery behind us and where we are on this beautiful sunny day. Okay, here we are. We're going to get started. This is my brother Tom.
How you doing?
We're at his house. He's going to assist and guide us through this and get going. What are we starting off with here? This is
about 8-9 pound pork butt. It's pretty lean, so we don't really have to trim a lot of fat off of it.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Yep.
Looks really nice.
Yep.
So, did you want something to drink?
No, not until I put the knife down. When we put the knife down, then maybe I'll
All right, well, you keep the knife and I'll keep the glass. How's that?
So, pretty much what I'm going to start just by cutting this in half and get a little bit of this out of the way.
Okay.
I'm doing this the way my grandmother and my mother did this, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that might not do it this way, but we want to keep it the way we grew up with it. It kind of keeps us connected.
Yeah, more traditional.
Yeah.
And it's easy to go to, a place and buy Italian sausage, but sometimes, you could kind of make this, right, like we want it. You could add more spice, you could add more fennel, you could add more salt, more pepper. You're basically putting it together, and it's fun. It's something to do for the holidays. You're not making 80, 90 pounds of this stuff. You're making, 8 pounds.
Right.
And so you're slicing this and you're quartering this up, kind of, correct?
Yep. Quartering it. I'm going to just do it like this, and then I'm going to turn it and cut it again. Kind of make it into about 1-inch squares.
Okay. Are you cutting with the grain here, or
cutting
are we going
against
the grain?
Cutting against it.
And is there a reason why we're doing that?
Yeah, it just breaks down the if you have any toughness or gristle in it, and that cutting against the grain, it just helps the whole process go a little better and grinds a lot easier. Okay. And besides all that, that's the way my Nana told me how to do it, and if I don't do it that way, then I'll start having bad dreams about her. So.
Okay, so what are you cut? What are we cutting out? We're cutting out some fat and things like that. Correct?
Yeah,
and
a little bit
like
of the
this
stringy
is probably
stuff.
going to get kind of caught up into the grinder, so you want to make sure you get some of that stuff out of there. But you don't want to cut too much of the fat out, right? Because you want it to be you don't want it to be too lean, because you want that fat in the sausage that's going to boil and give you your juice and your flavor. Correct?
Fat is flavor.
All right, fat is flavor.
Yeah. So once we get through this process here, we're gonna season it and run it through the grinder once, not twice, just once. And then at that point, this is a long process because the way my grandmothers did it and the way my parents did it.
So basically, this is done, right? So I can put this in the pan. Kind of get
the
it
only
out
thing
of
is we don't want your pinky finger in that bowl, so you gotta. Okay. So a little chunky piece there. We'll throw on the side here.
Throw it on the side for now, and then we'll look at it later. Thank God I got the apron.
Right.
All right.
Where's your mask?
Okay, excellent. So we'll continue to cut this up and get this ready for seasoning. Okay, we got all the meat cut up. We got it cubed, trimmed off some of the excess fat that we felt might have been a little bit too much. So what we do now is we're going to take this meat and we're going to weigh it. And that's going to determine how much we have versus how much spices we're going to put into the meat, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to take this, we're going to put it on the scale. We zeroed the scale out already to weigh the pan. And we got approximately 8 1/4 pounds.
Yeah, call it 8 pounds.
Call it 8 pounds of meat. So we will start from there and start with our seasoning. And usually it's 1 teaspoon a pound, and we'll start off with 1 teaspoon per pound of fennel. So we pre-measured everything here, and we're just going to sprinkle this on here. The fennel on.
We prefer to use whole fennel seed as opposed to powdered fennel. It's kind of a preference, but
yeah, back in the day when we were kids, remember that, doing this with Nana and Dad and Ma?
I do.
And
hamming me in the hand with a fork because I reached for a piece of fennel.
Well, we used to right before Christmas time, we would make the Christmas sausage, and this is what we did. It was just kind of a tradition that we did every year.
Yep.
You know, back in them days, you didn't have an electric grinder, so what you had to do is we had a hand crank grinder.
Yep.
So
I was the cranker for a while.
Yeah, me too. So my dad would be cutting the meat, my grandma would be seasoning it, and my mom, and then, you know, then they start putting it into the grinder, and we'd be cranking away and, you know, cranking through this. Before that time, back early in my Nana's earlier days, she would actually cut the pork up in tiny little cubes by hand and then get a funnel and stuff the casing with her thumb.
Yeah.
She didn't even have a grinder. So they were workhorses.
Where they got
back in them
that
days.
logo from Arm & Hammer.
So anyways, it's a teaspoon per pound of fennel. We measured it all out. We got 8 pounds. We put 8 teaspoons of fennel in here.
Yep.
And that's where we're at. So
Right.
you got to measure your meat once you cut it up and trim it, and then you calculate how much spices you're going to put in there. So I put the 8 teaspoons of fennel in here, and now we're going to put 1 teaspoon per pound of salt. So we want to put the salt in there, sprinkle it in, and then we're going to mix this all up when we're all done.
Yep.
And once the salt is in, we're going to do a teaspoon per pound of black pepper. Coarse ground black pepper is the best. It's got the most flavor. That's what you kind of want to use. I remember my mom and my nana used whole pepper, and then they smashed it themselves. They would put it in a towel. They would use a rolling pin.
Rolling pin,
crack
big
that
arms.
pepper. And so that's for the pepper, and then a half a teaspoon per pound of red pepper. Now this is kind of optional.
Yeah.
You know, we do a standard half a teaspoon a pound. Gives it a little bit of tang, but that's a personal preference.
Right.
If you want it hotter, you put more in of crushed reds. If you want it mild, you put less. If you don't want it hot or tangy at all, you basically don't put any in. So it's kind of optional, but we like to put a little bit of tang in there.
Unless you're like my son and want to clean out your intestines, then you put in a whole teaspoon per pound. Then,
Exactly.
yeah, right.
Okay, so now we're done with this. All the seasoning is in. Now we want to mix this up real well.
Right.
But we want to use a little bit of water. We're going to add some water to this.
Yep.
So
Water helps melt the salt and just helps the whole mixing process, hydrates it a little bit.
So we got some water. I have some water here, and we put a little bit of wine in. You don't want to overdo it with the wine, and the wine is basically, again, a preference. Whatever kind of wine you want. This is more of a dry, table wine, a blend, a mixture, Rosso wine. I feel like Father Tim, ready to give communion. Hi, Father Tim, in case you're watching this. There you go. So we're going to put a little bit of water in here, and get that going. You want to put the wine right in right away, or So, and then we're going to do a little bit of wine.
My mom wouldn't let my dad put in too much wine, but any kind of wine that was left over, he would drink it.
Yeah, like this.
Like that.
So we get the wine in there. We got the water. And the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And now we'll mix it up. Tom?
That'd be me.
Yeah.
I'm the cranker and the mixer right now. And I did wash my hands. So we want to kind of mix this thoroughly, and that water especially helps melt the salt, kind of mixes everything together here. Of course, after we're done thoroughly mixing this, you know, this is a 2-day process, because the way they did it is they would take it and put it in the refrigerator and let it marinate overnight. Now, a lot of people don't do that, especially if you're in a commercial environment. You don't have the time to do that. You just put all the ingredients together and run it through the grinder. But we like to keep that tradition going just because that's the way they did it, and we kind of want to keep that going the way they did it.
But it does add flavor to the sausage. Anything that's marinated for any amount of time with the spices are able to get into that meat a little bit.
Right. Unless you have COVID, then you lose your taste buds and you don't know anyway. So. You know, so, or a smoker. That's probably pretty good. And this is basically a foundation of this. You can tweak that, a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. The next day after this is all marinated, you know, you do a little test run with tasting, make a little patty and taste it, and you think you need to add a little bit more, Add a little more. Okay, so now this is thoroughly mixed and ready for marinating, but what we prefer to do, we're only going to grind this one time. We're going to run it through the grinder right now without the casings. It's going to help homogenize a little bit of the seasoning and help blend and mix it balanced. And then that's when we put, from that point, we'll put it in the refrigerator, we'll let it sit overnight, and we'll let it marinate to the point where we're going to stuff it tomorrow without grinding it and just stuffing it.
Okay, so let's get this into the hopper and we're gonna start feeding this in. We're gonna mix, we got this all seasoned and mixed, so now we're gonna take this through the grinder. So let's fire this thing up. So there's a reason that we run this through the grinder first. Right, Tom?
Yeah, it just helps balance out all the seasoning and mix everything before we marinate it. It's not really totally the way we might have done it years ago, just based on hand crank grinders. But over the years, my mother made that little adjustment, and she decided that grinding it first with the seasoning before marinating it just really left a balanced flavor in it before it got stuffed. And of course, we didn't grind it again once we stuffed it, because we always preferred coarse ground sausage. And again, that's a preference.
All right, going pretty good. Almost done here. Get this pan, let me put this up in there like so. There we go. That's taken care of. So this grinder works pretty good. It grinds up pretty good compared to a hand crank.
Yeah.
It comes out pretty fast.
All right.
Okay, we're ready to go.
And that is ready for the fridge.
And it tastes or smells excellent. You can really smell that fennel.
Feels really good on my joints.
Yeah. Okay, so this is ready for the fridge, and like Tom said, we usually marinate this overnight and just let the spices blend into the. A lot of commercial places will say, well, you could grind that all up and then it'll marinate inside the casing, and that might be true to some point. But once you put this in the casing, if you feel and then you test it, and you feel that you want more, it needs more salt, or it needs more fennel, or it needs something, you're kind of done. It's in the casing. You can't now add to it anymore.
Right.
So what we do is we were brought up to do is, like you said, let this marinate for overnight. And once we do that, we fry up a patty, and now we can test it, see what it tastes like, and when we got it where we want it, then we'll put it into the casings. Then we're gonna put this into the refrigerator, and we let this kind of marinate overnight. It's just something that we do. Our grandparents did it, my nana did it, my mom did it, and they just thought that the spices would blend better.
Yeah.
Okay, so we put that in overnight, and obviously we had one preset already. So we're going to take this one out, and this has been marinating overnight, and here we are. So we're ready to go with this. But what we do first here, what are we going to do, Tom? We're going to fry this up, right?
Before we put it in the casings, we want to do that final taste test on it. So we just make up a couple of patties, fry them with some nice homemade Italian bread, and taste test it. And if we want to tweak it either way, add a little more salt or a little more this or that, now's the time to do it before we're going to put it into the casing. So this is the taste test part. Okay, we're just going to fry up a couple of patties here just for a taste test. See how it tastes, see if we want to add something here or there. We just got to have a little willpower that we don't need to hassle get before we get it in the casing. Because if it tastes really good, we just keep making patties.
Okay, here we are. Look at that. Oh, it looks really, really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to test this, make sure it's got enough seasoning in it.